from wherever you are. My name is Lebogang Sinne. I am the Director for Technical Excellence here at PAFA, and I am very, very excited to welcome all of you to the start of PAFA's Sustainability Week 2024, which we host in collaboration with our various PAOs. Just from a bit of a housekeeping perspective, please note that our session is interpreted. There is simultaneous French to English interpretation, and that it is recorded, just to also make use of the chat functionality as you greet and introduce yourself, and make use of the Q&A function to raise questions to our various panelists. And just to note that although PAFA does not provide CPD hours, we will provide you with a confirmation of attendance, which you can use, where you can submit to your PAO for CPD recognition. This is a 2.5-hour webinar, and yeah, we're very, very excited. So with those few words, I'd like to hand over to the PAFA CEO, Ms. Alta Prinsloo, to give us our opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Lebo. Good afternoon, distinguished guests and esteemed colleagues from across Africa and beyond. It is such a pleasure to welcome you to the first day of our Sustainability Week. This year, under the theme, Forging a Sustainable Future, Strategies and Tools for Accelerated Implementation of Sustainability Standards in Africa. We are at a crucial point in the global movement towards sustainability. The pressing need to address climate change, social inequalities, and governance challenges has never been clearer. As professional accountants, we have a pivotal role in this transformation, acting as champions of good governance, transparency, accountability, and sustainable value creation. Today, Day 1 will focus on an enabling ecosystem for sustainability reporting in Africa. This theme is particularly relevant as we move from commitment to action in implementing the sustainability standards. Creating an enabling ecosystem is important for several reasons. I'll touch on 4. First, it provides the necessary infrastructure and support for the adoption and effective implementation of sustainability reporting. Second, it ensures consistency and comparability in reporting practices across different sectors and regions. Third, it facilitates the flow of sustainable finance by providing investors with reliable, comparable information. And lastly, it helps in identifying and addressing Africa's specific challenges in sustainability reporting. To aid us in this journey, we are privileged to have a diverse group of experts. Today, we have colleagues from the IFRS Foundation, including members of the International Accounting Standards Board and the International Sustainability Standards Board. We have a colleague from the International Federation of Accountants and early adopters of IFRS S1 and S2, who will share their invaluable first-hand experiences and learnings. Their participation underscores the collaborative effort required to build an enabling ecosystem and highlights the global support for Africa. PAFA is fully committed to playing our part. Our board has recently approved a strategic initiative that aligns perfectly with this week's theme and today's focus on creating an enabling ecosystem. This initiative aims to enhance the capacity of professional accountancy organizations and their members to support the adoption and implementation of the IFRS sustainability disclosure standards across Africa. The conceptualization of this initiative was made possible by the IFRS Foundation through funding from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office in the UK. Our deepest gratitude goes first to Dr. Ndidi at the ISSB and our colleague Ravi at the IFRS Foundation, whose tireless efforts, alongside others, brought this vision to life. We extend our sincere thanks to the diverse participants representing a broad spectrum of stakeholders who contributed to the 7 workshops across the continent, shaping the strategy for this initiative. Lastly, a special thanks to Lebogang Singh, our Director of Technical Excellence, and Daryl Scott, our consultant, whose dedication ensured the successful gathering and synthesis of this critical information. At the core of this initiative lies the establishment of a Sustainability Center of Excellence, which will serve as a central platform for advancing sustainability reporting practices across Africa. This center will provide comprehensive solutions for learning and development, adoption and implementation, and data. Our approach will be phased, ensuring that every aspect of this ambitious initiative is meticulously planned and executed for maximum impact. This strategic initiative confirms PAFA's commitment to positioning the accountancy profession as a leader in sustainable development across Africa. By strengthening our collective capabilities in sustainability reporting and assurance, the accountancy profession will play a pivotal role in attracting investment, enhancing decision-making, and contributing to the sustainable growth of our economies. Today, we are proud to announce the launch of this initiative. Stay tuned for our official release later today and expect ongoing updates as we continue to develop the Sustainability Center of Excellence and expand its offerings. As we embark on this week of learning and collaboration, I encourage you to engage actively, share your experiences, and consider how you can contribute to building an enabling ecosystem for sustainability reporting in Africa. The insights we gain from our early adopters, international standard setters, and global bodies will be invaluable in shaping our approach and overcoming challenges. The path to a sustainable future requires collective effort, innovation, and dedication. By working together, professional accountants, regulators, businesses, and international bodies can create an ecosystem that not only meets global standards, but most importantly, also addresses the unique needs and opportunities of our continent. Thank you for your participation in this year's Sustainability Week. Thank you, Lebo. Back to you.
Thank you, Alta. And indeed, we are really excited about the PAFA Sustainability Center of Excellence and look forward to engaging further with our colleagues online and globally as we move to create that center. Without much further ado, please allow me to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Ndidi Nolia-Dozien from the IFRS Foundation, or rather an ISSB board member, who will give us an update on what the board has been doing since we last met. Thank you. Over to you, Ndidi.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lebo, for your excellent moderation as always. Just confirming that you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you also, Alta. Thank you for the incredible work and the incredible leadership that you have. Thank you also and congratulations on the launch of the Sustainability Center of Excellence. That's a very exciting initiative, and I was very fortunate to witness the process of the board approving this. My mandate today is to give you an update of current developments at the ISSB. Again, it's an honor to serve as the African board member on the International Sustainability Standards Board, and I stand indebted to you in the room, accountants who are on this journey, and also regulators. A lot of you are involved in the regulation also of sustainability standards, the way that the ISSB views them, namely sustainability-related risks and opportunities as an extension or a core part of general purpose financial reporting, a common language that takes into cognizance the risks and the opportunities that are related to climate, which we know ravage our continent, ravage our enterprises, ravage our economies, and create an uncertain future. And so the ability for businesses to be able to take into cognizance the sustainability related and climate related risks and opportunities into their general purpose financial statements so that they are actually geared towards being able to provide that data and that information that is required to unlock capital flows, to enable global capital markets and especially African capital markets to function better, it would not have been possible without the engagement in the room. I just want to reach out again and specifically call you out, Alta, because you saw this vision and you have been committed and dedicated from the beginning, and you have taken the grants that we were able to facilitate as the IFRS Foundation through FCDO and made it real and made it possible for so many jurisdictions and my apologies. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay,
You just
so
cut off for a little bit.
I think I zoned out. Okay. Just to conclude, in terms of creating a common language and in order to unlock capital flows for Nigerian, African, South African, and I can list a whole number of countries that have already adopted the ISSB standards. More recently, Uganda, Tanzania, Zambia, and South Africa has made some giant strides as well in terms of adoption. So joining the leagues of Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, Zimbabwe, who initiated this journey quite early on in the day. Right now at the ISSB, what we're focused on, of course, are the agenda priorities. As a result of your participation and your support, we were able to publish IFRS S1 and S2. Right now, our agenda priorities focus on human capital and biodiversity ecosystems and ecosystem services. This is where
Lebo, I'm not able to hear Dr. Ndidi. Is it only me?
I was just about to ask the same thing. I think we may be struggling with Dr. Ndidi's connectivity today. I see she is still online and unmuted, but she's not visible. Dr. Ndidi, can you hear us? Mm. I'm seeing a lot of hands going up, colleagues. David, can you hear us?
Hi, yes, I can.
Okay. I'm surprised because I'm seeing a lot of hands going up, which I'm suspecting is because audience members want to let us know that they cannot hear anything. But perhaps in the interest of time, let us move on to the next session of our agenda for the day and see if we can sort out Dr. Ndidi's participation. And yeah, hand over to you, David, to give us a little bit of an IFAC perspective on how the profession can support sustainability. Over to you.
Thanks, Lebo. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon for probably most in the audience. As Lebo said, my name is David Madden. I'm the director at IFAC, responsible for sustainability. It's always a privilege to be a part of an IFAC program. It's always a privilege to follow Dr. Ndidi, even if her remarks are a bit abbreviated today. If she comes back, I'll stop and let her continue speaking. So I really appreciate the opportunity to discuss sustainability in the context of a strategy or framework that IFAC has been working to develop that can hopefully inspire and unify how all of us in the profession think about our profession's role and approach to sustainability, and specifically to high quality sustainability information. Lebo, if you can share the slides, please. I don't see those up there. I'm just waiting a second.
Apologies, David. They are coming up shortly.
Nope, understood. I'll
put them on presentation mode.
And if you can go to slide 2, please. All right, so I'd like to start my conversation today by proposing that sustainability disclosure, and by that I mean both its reporting and its assurance, is going to fundamentally change our profession by enhancing its attractiveness and its relevance for future generations. If sustainability is going to drive the transformation of business and society, then our profession, which sits at the heart of data, information, and decision-making, has a real opportunity to empower that transformational change through our day-to-day work. So at IFAC, we say that we are the enablers of sustainability because we will transform high-quality standards like S1 and S2 for reporting into high-quality information. And then we will bring trust and confidence to that information through high-quality assurance. So I don't know if accountants can save the world, but there will be no sustainable transition, in our view, inside of companies or in our capital markets or in society without our skills and our hard work. And at IFAC, this is how we think about our profession's role and responsibility with respect to sustainability, whether we're working within government, in a company, at an accountancy firm, or at a PAO. Next slide, please. So we need to actively prepare for and build capacity towards meeting this responsibility. And that's what I'd like to focus on today. 4 areas that are both opportunities and challenges for our profession. And then I believe I can outline a roadmap for how we achieve these goals. So the starting point is on this slide, that sustainability information is not about a new compliance exercise, but it is about empowering a change in the way companies are governed and managed. So we call this adopting an integrated mindset. It's thought leadership that draws upon many years of work at IFAC in support of integrated reporting. And no surprise, the central theme is connectivity. Connectivity that results in sustainability and financial information being used in decision-making by management, in board oversight of management, in risk and opportunity assessments, in driving long-term value, and in how companies ultimately then want to communicate with their stakeholders. So this requires breaking down or bridging information silos that may exist within companies so that finance and accounting professionals work with sustainability professionals, and they bring rigor from financial reporting to the data collection systems, processes, and internal controls around sustainability data information. In the long run, a company who adopts an integrated mindset approach will be more likely to combine financial audit and sustainability assurance, and professional accountants will be best placed and well positioned to provide this connected assurance. Next slide, please. So the second big issue which Dr. Ndidi was addressing and Alta has as well, is doing everything we can to help build a harmonized global system for reporting sustainability-related information. The leadership of Nigeria and other early adopters in Africa demonstrates that the starting point for high-quality, consistent, comparable, and decision-useful information is ISSB standards without carve-outs. Now, with the European Union finalizing their own reporting requirements ahead of the ISSB, there has been necessarily a lot of focus on alignment and interoperability between the European sustainability reporting standards and S1 and S2. So this makes sense, but interoperability, in our view, is its own form of complexity, and a patchwork of national jurisdiction-specific standards that then seek alignment or interoperability with ISSB standards is not the path to a harmonized global system. So at the local level in your country, we must discourage disclosure requirements that don't rely upon and build upon ISSB standards. Next slide, please, is high quality assurance that empowers trust and confidence in mandatory disclosure requirements. This will depend on ISSA 5000, which will be finalized next month by the IAASB, being adopted and implemented as the global baseline for assurance engagements. Assurance must be conducted by independent practitioners, be they professional accountants or other professional service providers, but all must follow a code of ethics as well as quality management standards, and we must have engagements conducted fully in accordance with ISSA 5000. So we need to call on regulators to provide a level playing field, meaning uniform oversight and enforcement for all assurance practitioners. Anything less would risk damaging confidence and trust in the new mandatory global system for sustainability information that is beginning to take shape. Next slide, please. And then finally, we have to focus on building capacity within our profession to empower its transformation and its attractiveness for the future. So this takes bold initiatives like what PAFA is working to build for the benefit of all of Africa. But it also takes personal professional initiative as well. We think the first step is awareness raising. We need to have a shared vision for a global system for reporting and assurance. Otherwise, we don't know what we are building capacity towards. Education is obviously key. Professional accountants must marry their existing skills and competencies with new ESG knowledge. But the goal is not to turn accountants into ESG experts. Last April, IFAC released proposed enhancements to the international education standards so that these standards can enable sustainability in the training of young, upcoming professional accountants. This is an important IFAC-led initiative. We also need our largest member bodies and the largest firms to lead on education and upskilling. Research. At IFAC, we believe that data and research, developing subject matter expertise, supports building capacity because it provides a factual foundation for dialogue about where we are in the sustainable transformation, and it provides the metrics we need for tracking progress in the years ahead. And finally, sustainability does start inside of companies, so we need to make sure they are getting prepared for reporting and assurance. Professional accountants working inside of companies are the starting point for understanding and implementing S1 and S2. So PAOs and with PIAB membership need to be on this message, and accountancy firms who do advisory work for companies must do the same. Next slide, please. So in order to make progress on the focus areas I just outlined, we all need a roadmap, a plan, whether we work in business, in professional practice, or at a PAO. So over the last several months, we've been meeting with stakeholders and working to develop a tool, a 4-part roadmap that we hope can help all of you put in place a plan that fits the circumstances in your own position and your own needs. Next slide, please. So where do we start? First, we need to recognize and embrace the reality that sustainable transformation happening in business also needs to take place within our own profession. Only then can we, as professional accountants, assume a position of leadership in the global business and regulatory community and credibly demonstrate our role and responsibility to enable this transformation. Next, the first part of upskilling sustainability is not necessarily about learning to calculate greenhouse gas metrics. It's about developing subject matter expertise in the relevant policy, standard setting, and thought leadership areas that can empower us to be a knowledgeable, evidence-based, and credible voice. This helps us to be effective advocates, shaping the debate within our marketplace, our workplace, as well as externally with policymakers, regulators, government officials, a broad range of stakeholders that are part of the ecosystem for sustainability information. Third, at a more technical level, we must leverage our existing skills and competencies with data, processes, internal controls, information analysis, and reporting, and apply those skills when working with experts in sustainability, as well as doing some ESG upskilling ourselves. And finally, we need to take a more collaborative approach. The pace of change in sustainability disclosure is swift. We can't go it alone, so we need to work more effectively within our profession, more collaboration and less competition, and we need to develop new relationships with stakeholders not typically directly involved in our financial information ecosystem. So IFAC's goal here is not to explain exactly what to do, but to help identify the issues and questions that can help you analyze what needs to be addressed in a proactive way so that the profession where you live and work is best positioned for sustainability. So let's take a look at a few examples. Next slide. Many point here that businesses are undergoing transformation, and as they address climate and other important sustainability matters, so must our profession. This includes how we conduct our own commercial activities and behaviors. But I want to emphasize that going green in our behavior is not really the point. Our role, using our core competencies in analyzing and interpreting data, and using it to successfully introduce and innovate new business models with our clients or where we work, is what will make us enablers of sustainability. We need to demonstrate that we embrace this challenge and see it as a responsibility. Otherwise, we won't be credible in the eyes of our clients and our stakeholders. Next slide, please. So how do we get ready to engage with and influence local decision makers? Well, is there data, analysis, and research that can help us develop a sound understanding of the issues that our employers or regulators and policymakers face? And then we can identify who are the relevant stakeholders and thoughtfully, methodically engage in an evidence-based way. Advocacy may not be natural for us, but we must have a voice at the policy setting and decision-making table. As an example of this, it's especially important for our profession that we engage, even in the early days, about discussions around the issues critical to high-quality sustainability assurance. Who will be authorized to do assurance in your home jurisdiction? Will ISSA 5000 be required? What is the competitive situation? And what is the realistic capacity for the accountancy profession to deliver high-quality assurance? How will regulators provide effective oversight and a level playing field? Next slide, please. So how can professional accountants prepare to do sustainability-related reporting, advisory, and assurance work? We think the starting point is to focus on leveraging our profession's existing skills and competencies with upskilling in sustainability-specific topics. The idea is to complement what we already know. We already have expertise in data, systems, processes, and internal controls. So how can this be applied to reporting and assurance on ESG? Our profession was there as the world transitioned onto IFRS standards for financial reporting. So how can we draw on that experience in implementing new sustainability reporting requirements? As individuals and professionals with an obligation for self-learning, are we proactively seeking out information? The chair of IFAC's International Panel on Accountancy Education likes to ask, who has actually read S1 and S2 or the ESRSs from Europe? We must individually take advantage of free webinars and attending conferences and webinars like this one. All of this helps break the inertia or the apprehension about acquiring new knowledge in sustainability. And then, following PAFA's lead, PAOs and firms, especially those that have resources, need to develop a plan and lead on training and find commercially viable ways to share this with organizations who lack their own financial resources. And leading by example means setting tone at the top of our profession, where we work and with our clients and stakeholders, and holding ourselves to the highest standard in doing this new work. An ethical or technical stumble in the sustainability space in these early days can be very damaging. Next slide. Finally, how can we work effectively with a wider range of stakeholders to better understand and address issues specific to local circumstances? We won't succeed, especially in smaller jurisdictions, without leveraging the expertise of others and without building consensus across a wider group of stakeholders. For example, there are regional committees or task forces or communities of practice for sharing new and best ideas, not working in isolation or reinventing the wheel. How can IFAC, PAFA, firms, companies, and PAOs work together as partners to convene and share information? Next slide, please. So we can't discuss a roadmap for sustainability without acknowledging the critical role of regulators. Sometimes our profession may have a somewhat adversarial relationship, but we need regulators as key partners in sustainability because the switch from voluntary to mandatory requirements is a really important inflection point for our profession. So we need to offer our expertise and our advice on the importance of global standards and high quality enforcement, on the role of sustainability disclosure as change management, not another compliance exercise, on the potential benefits of taking a phased or gradual approach to implementation of reporting and then assurance, and the helpful role that regulators can play in the early days of mandatory requirements by being flexible, not prescriptive, by thoroughly examining and understanding local issues, and by considering tools like safe harbors that can incentivize preparers to evolve their disclosures and bring them up in quality over time. Next slide. I'd like to conclude with this and one more slide, last two slides. So I hope that many of you are already familiar with our state of play research that is now in its 4th year. So we look at reporting and assurance practice among nearly 2,000 of the largest stock exchange listed companies across 42 jurisdictions. We've tried to capture trends in Africa by examining practice in Egypt, Kenya, Morocco, Nigeria, and South Africa. And the data you see here summarizes what we found in 150 companies from these 5 jurisdictions. So focusing on the numbers in the purple boxes, and if I can encourage you to also look at the 4-year trends, we clearly see a lot of sustainability reporting, 87%. But we observe a lot less assurance, which is hovering just above 30%. This is a much larger gap between the rate of reporting versus assurance rate than we find in the G20 countries in our study. And that 32% is driven by South Africa. Assurance is not really happening in Egypt, Morocco, Kenya, or even Nigeria. The assurance we do find, 70%, is limited in nature. We need an evolution to reasonable assurance, which is going to take time. But we need that if sustainability information is to be as decision useful as financial information. And finally, on this slide, there's a big difference between accountants who use IAASB standards for assurance and consultants who do not. This is a gap that must be closed. So these numbers look challenging, but that's real opportunity for our profession in the years ahead. So on the final slide, this is the start of the journey for high quality sustainability disclosure in Africa and around the world. Our profession has a unique opportunity to shape how society understands and uses sustainability related information to make more informed choices. At IFAC, we believe sustainability is the future of corporate reporting, and if we meet this new responsibility head on, we will revitalize and enhance the relevance, the attractiveness, and the brand of our profession. So I've tried to set the scene for the rest of the excellent sessions that PAFA has organized for today and the remainder of this week. If we can all agree as a profession on common challenges and opportunities, then we can work together to come up with a roadmap that emphasizes sustainability, embraces sustainability, that develops expertise so we can engage effectively, that leverages and builds what we already know in terms of skills and competencies, and that can take a collaborative approach. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, David. I always appreciate the IFAC's presence and your support and encouragement as it relates to the profession's capabilities and opportunities in the area of sustainability. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have Dr. Ndidi back with us very briefly. She does have network challenges. So if I can just ask that we give her attention one more time before she bids us farewell.
Thank you so much, Lebohang. And David, actually it was perfect to come in after your presentation, because you have indeed laid out the ground rules and the groundwork and the direction of travel for the next few days. I think I'm just going to conclude with 3 points. One of them is I honor you here. Indeed, my network is not great. I am bereaved. I lost my mother over the weekend. And so, the connection between this is sometimes the most irreconcilable things come together. In this instance, over this weekend, I've been reflecting on death and life and the way that they come together. In the same way, a few years ago, we would never have thought that the core driver and the key shaper on sustainability standards going forward would indeed be accountants. And not just that Africa would be leading. Africa is not following in this journey. Africa was the first to raise their hand and say, we are going to adopt these standards. And not just did they say it, they acted on it. Among the first roadmaps that have been published in collaboration with the private sector across regulators. So for example, just last week, I was at the regulatory roundtable in Nigeria, where all the regulators came around the table to essentially decide that they were all, not just the main Financial Reporting Council, but all of the regulators, whether the central bank or insurance or NIMET, the Met organization, were going to adopt the ISSB standards to ease the cost and burden of reporting for preparers, and also ensure that these standards can be applied in a proportionate manner. Accompanying them were the 4 entities, Seplat, MTN, Access Bank, Fidelity Bank, that have already incorporated the standards into their general purpose financial reporting and sustainability reports, and are well on their way towards moving on that. So I want to remind you that Africa is leading through your efforts, because of your efforts. And so the unlikely, namely accountants, playing a significant role in shaping the implementation of and the adoption of sustainability standards is real. The other strange connection, which I realized when I decided to join this call, which I know is unusual, you don't lose your mother and 2 days later, you're honoring your public commitments. It's because she has always honored my work, and she would not like me to break commitments because of her. And so I'm here honoring her. And interestingly, I picked up the sustainability profession 30 years ago, and she was an accountant. She was an accountant who became an auditor. And these two worlds as well are coming together. So in many ways, being here with you today is honoring her and honoring her work and her diligence and her work ethic, and yet always finding the balance between work and life. And I think the last thing I want to say is that I want to put out a word of gratitude for your faith, because I know how hard it is for the African continent to have embraced sustainability standards when we have so many other issues. I commend your foresight in recognizing how important it is to really address and embrace the material risks and opportunities to help us better shape our general purpose financial reports in order that we can unlock the capital flows to invest in more resilient economies and institutions going forward and actually serve our continent, but also serve the world. And so in many things, Africa has led. And in this particular space, because of the work of PAFA, because of the work of the regulators across the African continent, because of you in the accounting profession, we are leading. And I want to ask you for one thing, that the connection between the accounting and the finance functions within institutions continues to build a bridge with sustainability professionals who bring their own knowledge and insight into this particular journey. It's so important that there is a bridge between the unlikely. Even if the accounting profession was not that intertwined with the sustainability profession going forward, I think that just like over the weekend, I have realized the continuity and interlacing of death and life as one continuum. I think that in order to really succeed on this journey and make sure that we don't just report. This is not about compliance. This is about creating value. This is about mitigating risk. And it's about creating new opportunities for business by embedding sustainability, material sustainability related risks and opportunities in our general purpose financial statements, which is what is used by investors to determine where capital flows. And so I know this is an unlikely connection, just like being here is unlikely. I want to thank Lebo and Alta, who have tried to kick me off this call because they have said go and focus on the essential. I want to thank the network, which allowed me to come back in and finish, apologizing to you for breaking off earlier and encouraging you on this very, very important occasion. You will see later on today my IASB colleague, Bruce, who continues to work very closely with me on connectivity between sustainability and accounting standards. Tim Kassim, also our colleague, who will be speaking about the digital taxonomy, where I truly also believe Africa can lead. And it's something that we're really working on. My colleague Simon will speak on my behalf to open that. Ravi continues to do incredible work. Daryl Scott, who left the IASB and joined the SSB advocacy, is another big champion. And over back to you, Lebo, and thank you again, Alta, and commendations to everyone for today.
Thank you so much, indeed. And let me just echo all the messages of condolences that are on the chat. We really do, wish you strength and send you lots of love and light during this difficult time. Colleagues, I just want to encourage you to please remember to use the Q&A box for your questions. I think I saw one or two questions which I've now lost because the chat functionality tends to move very, very quickly. But if somebody did ask about the soft copies of the presentations, absolutely, we will share those with participants at the end of today's session. And I've noted the two questions that are on the Q&A. There is one that just, and David, please feel free if you, David or Alta, if you want to respond to this, but there's one that says, the countries yet to adopt IFRS, could this be the same for sustainability standards? How best can sustainability be communicated to stakeholders? And I think, this talks a lot to what PAFA is intending to do in the work that we're looking to create, to carry out through the Center of Sustainability. We are looking at advocacy and consistently bringing the message to stakeholders, to regulators, to policymakers of the relevance of sustainability standards. And then somebody who decided to be anonymous wants to highlight that climate change is a major focus internationally, while Africa has practical social and governance issues. And I think maybe just to respond to that very briefly is to say that we absolutely recognize that Africa has Africa-specific matters that we need to address, and we continue as PAFA to advocate. And that's why when we talk about the technical excellence pillar and our commitment to the development of international standards, is precisely to ensure that as standard setters are considering their topics, as they consider which standards they should focus on next, it is important that as Africans, we put our hands up, we communicate what is essential for us to be addressed. So as it relates to climate change, yes, climate change is a major focus internationally, but it is actually very true to also note that as Africa, we are probably suffering the biggest impacts of climate change. So it was decided on because of the urgency of climate change. So I'm going to stop talking. Kantha, I see your message. I will not read it now because I recognize that I need to call on the next panel, but for the other 2 points that I have tried to respond to, if our other panelists wish to add more, please feel free to tap your answers there, and we will also continue to just take questions as and when time permits. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to move on to our next item on today's program. I hope you've all seen the program. Sibongile did share it on the chat function along with the speaker briefs, and I'm going to call on our PAFA Corporate Value Reporting Technical Advisory Chairperson, Mr. Raymond Chaboko, to introduce his panel as we hear a little bit more from the early adopters of IFRS S1 and S2. And Raymond, of course, I'm sure you will reiterate some of that parts about participation in standard setting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lebo, and good afternoon, good day to everybody, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Thank you very much for joining this session. I am going to introduce the panelists that I'm going to be speaking to this afternoon. We're going to be speaking to all of us this afternoon. As you heard, my name is Raymond Chamboko. I chair the Corporate Value Reporting Technical Advisory Group of PAFA, and I'm a director with W Consulting, a firm based out of Johannesburg. I am honored to moderate this panel discussion that will consider the learnings and experiences of the early adopters of IFRS sustainability disclosure standards. Speaking to us on the panel are a preparer and a regulator, both from Nigeria. The discussion we will have will seek to provide insights into how preparers approached their sustainability reporting journey and how the regulator supported this process. It will explore the challenges encountered during the adoption and implementation process, both from the preparer side as well as the regulatory perspective around the journey. The panelists will share lessons as well that they've learned and their best practices from, to share those best practices with us to enable us to consider what we should be doing as part of the process of adopting the standards. We will also discuss the regulator's role in ensuring reporting integrity and supporting first-time preparers. I acknowledge that there will be regulators as well that are on the call that are also looking to learn from what Nigeria has seen as part of their process. And lastly, we'll examine the potential impact of sustainability reporting on corporate reporting and corporate responsibility and investor confidence in the Nigerian market as a proxy for other markets where we're looking to adopt these standards. So to introduce my panelists, first up will be Kemi Adisa. She's the General Manager Sustainability and Shared Value at MTN Nigeria. She is a member of the Transition Implementation Group of the International Sustainability Standards Board and a member of the GRI Stakeholder Council. She led MTN Nigeria's early adoption of the IFRS S1 and S2 standards and serves as a member of the Nigerian IFRS S1 and S2 Adoption Readiness Working Group established by the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. She's also a board member at the E-Waste Producer Responsibility Organization in Nigeria, so you can see sustainability is very close to our heart. Joining us as well is Razak Abubakar. He's currently head of Sustainability Reporting Regulations Unit of the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. Prior to joining the FRC Nigeria, Razak has had a diverse work experience in the financial services industry, private and public sectors as well, within the Nigerian economy. With this wide-ranging experience, he has carved a niche for himself in sustainability reporting, financial reporting, audit and assurance. regulatory compliance, and, as you can imagine, brings a fresh perspective into the regulatory processes. Thank you both for joining us. Razak, I don't see you. I'm hoping that you are there. I can see you're on. If you can just turn on your camera for us. Thank you very much. Excellent. Good. Right. Thank you very much for both for joining us. I've got a few questions that I'm gonna pose to the both of you. And while we are here, to the audience, if you can also pose any questions that you have using the Q&A function, as Lebo has mentioned to us. Unfortunately, we were supposed to have a third panelist. She's been called away at short notice, so unfortunately she will not be able to join us. But I think if we can try and keep the session going as much as possible, and hopefully we'll be able to learn from what we're hearing from Kemi and Razak. I will start off then with Kemi. Kemi, I would like to speak initially about your adoption journey and the implementation challenges that you faced. Can you briefly describe to us the journey that you and your team at MTN went on in adopting the IFRS Sustainability Disclosure Standards?
Thank you so much, Raymond. Just before I respond, I want to confirm that you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think it's been an interesting journey of learning and of growth as an organization. I think for us at MTN, we have considered sustainability about as a concept in itself. We consider it as a concept of creating and protecting shared value for the organization and for our stakeholders. And this we felt, the only way we could, be sustainable in our practices was to embed sustainability at the heart of the organization. So that's, formed the background with which, we embraced the adoption of the IFRS standards. And so once we, with that at the back of our mind, we understood the importance of transparency and standardized reporting in, sustainability. And as a result, we decided to align ourselves with the ISSB and the IFRS standards. And we did this not just as, just by saying, but we got the approval and buy-in right at the top. In particular, I think it was in June last year or so, when the standards were launched in Nigeria, and we had our board chair speak publicly to MTN Nigeria's early adoption stance to say, look, we will adopt those standards. So right from the top, in terms of our board, they bought into us adopting the standards. And the journey, I mean, when you talk about it, now it looks like it was just a switch, but there was a whole lot, that was required. A key one that I remember was us conducting a materiality assessment, which is, understanding the impact of our business, both positive and otherwise, on our stakeholders, as well as the prioritization and importance, of those issues to us as well as to our subscribers. We also considered a gap analysis of the requirements of the standard, because that was also key. Remember, they were newly launched. So it took a while, to get through the report. And I just smiled when David was talking earlier about understanding, the requirements of the report, because it is bulky, if I must say so. And so reading and understanding, what the standards requirements are in terms of what you need to disclose and how to disclose that, that also was some time. And what we did after that was to conduct a gap assessment, to say what are those requirements that we're able to meet and what are those requirements that we're not able to meet. And a critical part of our preparation was also membership of the Financial Reporting Council's adoption, readiness working group. And that really put us at, the helm of affairs in terms of understanding the standards, the requirements, and working with other, stakeholders. So the other preparers, regulators, as well as, professional service firms and the academia. So it was a robust group where we're able to engage raise our questions, our concerns as we felt, in terms of the adoption within Nigeria. And so those, pivotal steps, I think, were really critical in guiding us, towards the adoption journey as, we progressed. I think I'll stop from here now. Thank you.
Thank you, Kemi. What I often see, especially in our line of work being accountants, is that we tend to wait until the last minute before we adopt new things. What were your key motivations for early adopting?
Okay, thank you. I think our primary belief really as an organization was believe in sustainability and its ability to create value for us as an organization and for the society. Because what the requirements were asking for were not things that we were averse to. They were things that we strongly believed in and were really, required to disclose on that. And by becoming early adopters, we really wanted to position ourselves as industry leaders, as well as, demonstrate our commitment, both, morally, financially, socially, and even from a corporate governance perspective, show that commitment as a leader in the industry, that our word is our bond. And we also saw it, of course, as, a way of gaining competitive advantage, to say that, yes, we are the leaders, and also to build trust, with our various stakeholders, our investors, our subscribers, to say, when we say we're going to do something, we truly commit to it at MTN, and we give it our all as we do that. So I think those are some of the, considerations for early adoption of the standard, rather than waiting, till everyone's on board.
I can imagine that as part of that process, you would have faced some challenges. Have you had any support from the regulators as well as part of the process?
Oh, yes. I mean, we've had extreme support from the regulator, and like I explained, a key, support was the adoption readiness, which, was like a working group with all of the key critical stakeholders that we had together. Now, when you talk about challenges, I think, one of the obvious ones, is aligning our current processes and, framework with the requirements of the standard. So there were some elements of the standard that we were not able to meet, which we disclosed in our report to say, look, this is something we're just, starting. It's a journey, and we will evolve, and adapt to those standards, because we're not modifying or the standards. We are adopting as is. So there's no, we're going to do this part or we're not doing this part. So we're disclosing that, look, as of this instance, we're not up to this level, but we will get there. And this is how we intend to get there. We also had a few challenges with our data. So if you look at our report, you will see some data that we didn't have in prior years. And we put it there, not available, to say, look, we're going to continue to provide those data in future years. So data collation, validation, and verification, is also something that you need to pay real close attention to, because some of that data were not being collected at all as at the time, the report was being prepared. And that, is challenging, because it can impact the credibility of your reporting, and you really do not want to have a half-baked report that a lot of blanks in your report. So some of those we had to, again, in our gap assessment, identify what are those reports that we had data for, and what are those metrics that we didn't have data for, and disclose all of that, and state in there, how do we intend to get some of those. Some we're working with professional service organizations who are well-versed, in supporting organizations with those data. Some are things that we're already doing that we then need to start to assess and evaluate. An example is waste management. I mean, we do have waste collection being done, but we just never, weighed it or evaluate it. And this is something that we're also required to disclose. So we then put in, meters, collection points, and processes in place such that we're now able to weigh it and be able to see, what is our contribution to, the waste that is being disposed of within, our immediate locality. And then we start to talk about, how we dispose of that. But as at the time we were preparing this, we didn't have, any method for collecting the weight and the value of, what that waste we had to dispose of. So, things like that were some of the challenges that we faced.
There's a word that you use there, the word journey, and there's a couple of additional words that I'm not going to pick on, but I think it's important just to reiterate that point that it's not going to happen all at the same time. It's going to be a process. It's going to be a journey. And getting some of this information available, having access to some of this information, we may not have it right now, but that should not stop us. And I just like to put that message out there to anybody that is still looking to adopt, that it should not just be we've done it and we are done. It's a process. You will improve on it as you go along. I will now focus. Thanks, Kemi. I will now focus on the impact of the process that your organization, as well as lessons that you have learned over this period that you've been through. I appreciate that it's still early days. Your report has only been out there for a month, from what I can tell from the information that I've had access to. But I'd expect that there's been some impact on the organization, the way that you operate. You've spoken at the moment about you starting to measure certain things that you didn't measure before. How has adopting these standards affected your internal processes and your decision making, in addition to what you've already said?
So, I mean, a lot of what we had to do, even in terms of the adoption, was to bring everyone on board. And we saw the adoption as a change management process, so it's not about, a group of sustainability experts sitting in one room and deciding to write about a report. It was involving all of the business leaders, in terms of their own responsibility and the roles in the sustainability reporting process. Like I did say, we seek to embed sustainable practices within our business processes. So there is no budget for sustainability, at MTN. Sustainability is part of the job that you do on a daily. So it is about refining and, modifying your process. And so, by virtue of how this, processes work, sustainability becomes embedded in the process and the decision making. So whatever it is you're doing, whatever your processes are, depending on the material topics that we've picked. So take, for example, our local content. It's one of our principles that we preach, and that is to, development of the local SMEs, either from trading, either from supporting their businesses. So if you're going to, do any business or whatever it is you're doing within your business area, you've got to consider, how you source it locally, so there is no separate decision making from how you run your operations. Same with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not something, with a separate strategy or a separate concept. It is part of the recruitment process in HR, for example, or the diversity of the suppliers that you have. So it's encompassing in all of that. And so everyone now has the thought process to look through their processes with the lens of the ESG and sustainability, and we're finding a lot more informed and responsible decision making across the organization. Of course, it's a journey with no end in sight, because once you meet one target, you set the other target, similar to the way you set your financial targets. I haven't heard anyone say they've met their EBITDA target and that's where it stops. We meet it, and then the next time we're trying to see how much more effective can you be, how much more efficient can you be, and that is what this also is about. So we look at it as the non-financial metrics in the organization.
I mentioned it's been a month since you published, and it's your 5th sustainability report as well. Yes, transitioning from where you were previously to the ISSB standards. And I'm just trying to understand, what are lessons you have learned as part of that transition process that you think that we might be able to benefit from as the audience listening to you today, that you may want to share with us?
I think first thing is early preparation, is really, really essential. And what worked in our favor is this is our fifth report. So if you haven't started any, there is some journey, ahead of you. But I guess what makes it easy also is that you're starting from a plain brief. And so that may also help, because for us, we also had to marry this with some of our existing processes. And another crucial lesson for me would be the value of collaboration. And I think we were spoken to earlier, which is collaborating, within the organization itself, and also with external stakeholders. So the regulator also critical. And of course, attending webinars such as this to also learn more and get more informed about it. Having robust data collection systems, is also something that is critical. So, being able to collect data monthly and then being able to roll that up quarterly and annually, again, similar to how you would collect your accounting data. So the earlier you can have processes for data collection, verification, and validation, because one of the things that we did was also to try and get the leaders in the organization to verify and validate those data. So that even enhanced some processes in terms of the data collection process, where because no one looked at those data, there was let's submit it in this way or that way. But now that you're questioning the accuracy of the data, you're able to get a better oversight of the data that is being pulled together. So that also help. And I think when you look at the benefits that you will get from adopting the standards, you're building stakeholder trust, you're creating long-term value. I think that would be some kind of incentive for people. But it's really a journey. It's never ending. And each time you're making the report and you're trying to put your data together, if you're consistent in looking, okay, if you're consistent in one, embedding the processes within the organization, two, collaborating with critical stakeholders, three, building capacity, because everyone needs to understand what the standards are, everyone needs to understand their role in building the standard, in drafting the report. So we had several sessions for the various people in the organization who were contributing to the report. So we had workshops, we had FAQs, we had all kinds of sessions just to explain to people, to say, look, this is all the new standard, this is what you're required to do. I think if some of this would help in making the reports a useful exercise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kenny. We appreciate your thoughts on that. I'm going to turn to Razak and for next couple of questions. Razak, as the regulator, you surely have had some lessons as well that you've learned and that hopefully you can share with us. Being the first out of the starting blocks on the adoption journey, Nigeria was first to put their hand up to say, as a country, you are going to be adopting the ISSB standards. And what is it that you have seen, or how has Nigeria approached the implementation process of the IFRS sustainability disclosure standards? And what steps have you taken to ensure the integrity of the sustainability reporting that you're seeing within your jurisdiction?
Thank you very much, Raymond. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. Learning from our experience of IFRS adoption in 2012 in Nigeria, we have learned a lot of lessons that when you have first mover advantage. When you early adopt, you have some experiences that you need to have rather than adopting it lately. So learn from that experience, and from our experience, we have been getting in review financial statements of listed companies and other public interest entities. We have seen inconsistency, lack of transparency, and lack of comparability in comparing sustainability reporting. Why it's not being done the right way? Most people follow what is normative rather than the prescriptive best practice. And these are always been issue for us as Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, because it's difficult for us to actually verify the sustainability reporting because of we have disparate, different independent standard setters that different companies are adopting different standards from. So, so when at COP26, when IFRS Foundation declared that ISSB was formed as a global baseline to unify and harmonize sustainability reporting, we are so excited at Financial Reporting of Nigeria because this will solve some of the concerns, problems that we're having in sustainability reporting, comparability, and transparency. And we are so happy so that at COP27 in Egypt, we were there to launch our intention for early adoption, seeing the advantage to have that first mover advantage. And doing that, coming back to Nigeria, we had to work with, we did what we call advocacy with other professionals in the group. We form what is called Adoption Readiness Working Group, which comprises of the premium listed company, regulators, professional accounting organizations like ICANN, HANAN, and academia. And we also involve the Big Four so that we can sit down together and plan the adoption. In the adoption, if you look at the roadmap, we have seen that it may not be feasible to start adopting 2024. The group start and form a phased implementation plan so that for us to be ready and to do it, not just doing it, but doing it the right way and to have a seamless implementation. And we have also learned our lesson. We have seen a lot of difference between when you do it normatively, where there's no requirement, and when you have to follow a standard. In the last reporting, the regime of AESG reporting, when we have disparate regulators, we don't have such harmonization. Now we have seen that with this IFRS S1 and 2, we can see reporting and we can compare companies based on IFRS S1 and 2. So we have learned that harmonization is good, and we also learned that nothing is good as collaborations. We share our experience with other regulators and the PA, professional accounting organizations, academia, where we have a robust discussion, just like Kemi has just said, that we have a robust discussion on how to go about it. A lot of experiences were brought forward, and at the end of the day, we harmonize and we agree that the best way to do is to do early adoption, to have advantage of that first mover advantage.
Thank you, Razak. You mentioned the establishment of the technical readiness working group that you established to help with the process and the various people that are involved in it from the profession, from academia, and from practitioners as well, that have helped you learn some lessons or gather some information about what sort of challenges they would face as part of the adoption process. Can you describe for us, I guess that would be one aspect of the help that you are providing the reporters as part of their journey. But can you describe for us some of the support mechanisms that the FRC Nigeria has put in place to assist first-time preparers apart from the establishment of this readiness working group we've just mentioned? Okay,
thank you very much. And if you look at the adoption readiness roadmap that we have released, we have a lot of reliefs from the standard itself. We adopted all these reliefs to assist the early adopters. If you look at S1 and S2, there are some reliefs such as, for example, comparability. In the year one, you're not allowed to do comparability. You are exempted from reporting scope 3 GHG emissions, and you can delay your reporting 6 months after your financial year. All these 8 adoption, we adopted them. But in addition to this, we give what we call jurisdictional support, such as allowing a phased implementations, and we have three different routes of adopting sustainability reporting in Nigeria. The first one is early adopters who want to adopt even before the effective date of 2024 as outlined in the standards. So we have the likes of MTN, Fidelity, Access Bank, and Seplas who have declared to even report before the adoption date. So we have seen them rolling out their financials this year. Now, we have second phase, which we call voluntary adopters. This is just a learning process for anyone who want to have a learning curve to be used to the sustainability reporting. So between 2024 and 2027, this period is the learning curve period for organizations to imbibe the culture and learn and do it gradually before the mandatory date of 2028. So this is part of the assistance we have done for them. Not only that, we are doing collaborations with them. We open our door for questioning. And last month, we did a training for all the financial institutions in Nigeria on adoption of S1 and S2. The essence of doing this is for them to, we are not regulators who want to penalize. We want them to learn their role, do the right thing. So we organize a free lectures for all financial institutions in Nigeria, and all of them came. We have overwhelming attendance for them to come and see what is in there, what is even they expect to do as entities. Then next month, 3rd and 4th of September, we're having another round of training for oil and gas and telecom. We have received a confirmation of more than 120 companies coming in Lagos. For them, the last one we did in Abuja, this one we are doing in Lagos, for them to come and see how S1, S2 looks like, and what are the expectations, regulatory expectations for them. We are not stopping at that. Last week, just last Thursday, we did regulatory roundtable to do the buy-in for the for other regulators too, to come and see the journey so far and what we expected from them. And they vouch for us that, look, we are going to give you support. All the entities under our jurisdiction, we adopt S1 and S2. And we have also vouched for that as part of support. Whatever stand they need in terms of questioning, we are ready to provide for them, because we are doing advocacy collaborations and in order to assist them to do it the right way. And if you look at the CEPLAS, MTN, before they release their report to the market, we did a kind of pre-review. We went to this organization, we look at it and see, to dot their I's and cross their T's before, so that we are trying to help them, assist them in order to see that they can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Razak. I would expect that, I think, given where you are and the people that have, the companies that have adopted already, that there would have faced challenges as part of that process. Is it something that you as a regulator have maybe taken a step back to have a look at, to see what sort of challenges do those companies face, what solutions can be put in place, and what sort of information can be put onto the market to help other people that are also embarking on a similar journey? Is that something that you've had a chance to have a think about yet?
Thank you very much. If you look at the roadmap, we have a long list of requirements for them to be able to come up with the readiness, because we don't just want them to declare readiness, we want it to be seen as being ready. And we have a requirement. For example, the first three requirements we have is that we want to have your board approval. So we want to see your board resolution that actually the buy-in is at the top echelon of the organization. You are ready to want to see the board approval. Then we want to see your implementation gap analysis. What are the things you are doing before, and what are the things you want to do? How do you intend to bridge the gap? Then the implementation plan. How do you want to implement your? Most of these companies were asked to bring documents, they did within the time. And there are other monitoring we are doing as time goes by. So these are, but some of them that they have not done properly or they will do, we are being patient for them to do, because we are trying to encourage them in order to encourage others. Just today on the national dailies, we congratulated the 4 early adopters in all the national dailies. We are doing this to encourage others who might be willing to join the voluntary adopters, as we have drawn cutting on the early adopters. So from 2024 to 2027, so we are already talking to many banks. They have spoken to us that by next year they are going to turn in their report. So we are collaborating with them. We don't just show them, want them to discuss with us any challenges they have. And we are not just ticking the box. We want them to see that whatever we need is give us and submit. Thank you.
Again, I think there's a couple of words that you used in there which I quite like. Coming from a regulator, regulators we tend to associate with a big stick, and knocking us over the head whenever we don't do something right as reporters. But the word collaboration that you use, and you used it quite a few times in what you just said there, fills me with a lot of hope in terms of the process. Again, it's a journey, and none of us are going to get it right immediately. But I think that process of over time to get it right, and I think what you said about the collaboration between you as a regulator and the reporters, in order to ensure that they are on the right path, in order to ensure that the right information is being provided. I see there was a question that I think came here. I think you might have answered it on the chat, asking, but well, how does one know what information to put in there into the report? Where do you start and where do you stop? Again, it's something that I think we are all going to learn over time. We're not going to get it right immediately. And I think the words that like you said, you used there, Razak, about that collaboration, I think are quite important as part of that process. Because I think that will then help all of us in terms of just making sure that I think whatever reports we put in together are reports that are communicating truthfully what it is that we're doing and where we are coming short. And that acknowledgement that, we are coming short in certain areas, and this is how we can ensure that we are doing the right thing over time. So I think the question I was going to ask about enforcement mechanisms at this point in time, I think is probably a little bit premature, but I think I'm certainly heartened to hear what you had to say. So for both of you, I think there's one thing that I wanted us to just focus on a little bit, which is around collaboration and, where we see this taking us going forward. Razak, you've already mentioned some of the collaboration that you've got, but maybe let me just pose a question to you anyway, in case of other things that you may want to add on to that. How have preparers and regulators collaborated during this early phase, in addition to what you've already said about you getting involved with reviewing reports and making sure that everybody's on the right place and putting in place the initiatives to help with the capacity building?
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, like I said, after the COP27, when we came back home, we look at some companies, listed companies have these, is part of the listing rules. Sustainability reporting is there. We have in Nigeria, we have central bank sustainable banking principles, which is based on sustainability reporting. We also have another for SEC, which for all the listed company. So sustainability reporting is not particularly new to most of these listed companies. But what is new is the manner and in such a way harmonization and so that and reporting, which is now different. What they used to do before is to do CSR and call it sustainability and without any data-driven link to financial performance. So, but now the essence of it is to now do it the right way. So most of the companies that we have now, if you look at like MTN, Access Bank, they have a very good, robust ASG reporting prior to the adoption of sustainability reporting. And when you look at some of them, they even adopted TCFD recommendations, which is also embedded in their reports, which is based on which S2 is actually aligned on. So they are not difficult actually to really adopt it, but they need to be encouraged because there are new things. There are new things. The reporting system is different. The reporting, decarbonization and the waste management is different. So we need to work with them to give them the support. Initially, we have about 25 companies that we have chosen from our experience, from our review of out of about 156 listed companies in Nigeria. We picked top 25 whom we believe they have done it well. Out of them, we called them, we had a meeting with them, we encouraged them that this is what we want to do and we want to support you. But luckily, we have 4 of them today that actually the others are coming up. So we are opening our doors. We communicate with them that, look, this is it's a journey and you can't get it right. It's a process that we have to collaborate with you. So a lot of them are joining by 2024. I'm going to see a number of them joining the rank by next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Razak. Kemi, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, but I'm also giving you an opportunity to tell your regulator what it is that you are seeing that can be improved upon as part of this process. Without the regulator, come back and shout at you.
Well, to be fair, I mean, I have to acknowledge and commend, our regulator for their proactive stance. I mean, last week they had a regulatory roundtable where they brought in, I think it was over 10 different regulators, into the room to try to harmonize their requirements as regards sustainability reporting. And I thought that was really profound because like you said, yes, we do have, different regulators, with different requirements of what we should report, but getting them into the room and, working with them, workshopping, the ISSB standards with them to try and get all of us to speak one common language, essentially simplifying, sustainability reporting for us in Nigeria, I thought was really commendable. And I don't think we can ask for more than that, where every regulator sees and, is able to match their requirements from what we have, within the ISSB standard. Not only does that, simplify the work for us as preparers, but it also brings one common language, one common platform for everybody across, several industries. And I think that, makes life a lot easier, and they, also are able to transition from one industry to the other, speaking the same language. So not because they're here, but, because of what they've done, they've really, really, helped to simplify things for us as preparers.
Thank you, Kemi. We are running out of time, so I am going to go to the Q&A and see if I can pick a question or two for and throw them at the both of you. Kemi, maybe I'll start with you. There's a question that's been put here by Eugene around how you've dealt with double materiality. I won't go through the entire question, but maybe you want to address the concept of materiality and double materiality in particular, given it's not a concept in the IFRS sustainability standards, but maybe something that you might have considered as part of your processes.
So, I mean, like you said, it's not part of the ISSB standard, but again, we are not adopting the ISSB standard in isolation. Like I explained, we already had, a history and a track record of our sustainability reporting. So what we try to do is look at what are those, issues that are of material importance to us as an organization in terms of how we add value to the society. And then we also look at our stakeholders and see what are those material topics that are of importance to them. And so we find ourselves going, right through the gamut of the E and the S and the G. We're able to pick topics. So from digital rights, in terms of our subscribers, speaking to, protecting children online as they access, the internet through our network, to diversity and inclusion in terms of our female workforce, to environmental footprint, from waste management to emissions, so it gives us that really, really broad, perspective up to our financial performance. And we're able to, prioritize and seek out the KPIs that relate to those material topics, and then we're able to report on those.
Thank you, Kemi. Razak, last question for you. There were some comments that have been made here, some questions that are asking about the audit, the assurance of sustainability information. And there was a comment made earlier on as well when David was speaking around the lack of assurance in the African context whenever they've looked at the reports that have been done. Where are you as a jurisdiction around assurance and enforcing assurance?
Thank you very much. Like I said, that a number of companies in Nigeria, listed companies, they have a track record of some form of sustainability reporting before now. And they have gone ahead, if you look at their report, to have some level of assurance based on the old regime. But at the adoption of the ISSB standards, we felt that we should work with since we are performing and dealing with a global world, we are looking at International Auditing and Standard Assurance Standard Board, ISSB, who is coming up with ISA 5000 to have a kind of a guiding principle for assurance before we make mandatory. But if you look at our adoption roadmap, we are not making assurance mandatory for now, until after 3 years of adoption. We believe that by this year, ISA 5000 will be issued, or next year. So by anyone adopting sustainability reporting standard, we need to start with limited assurance 3 years after the initial adoption. So, for example, if you are adopting 2024, by 2027, we expect to have limited assurance. Then after 2 years, we now get reasonable assurance, so that it's part of the way of holding them in the hands or handle them, so that they will not because most of them are learning actually. So assurance is coming, but it's not coming now. We want to have instruments for implementing it, and we're going to rely on ISA 5000 for doing it. And we gave them a phase period of 3 years after voluntary adoption, so that they will learn their rope and do it the right way. Because we're not just talking about doing it; we're talking about doing it the right way. Because we, at FRC, we frown at greenwashing. and we have told them the implementation. We advise them to have these sustainable practices, because it's when you have practices that you can have reporting. So we to institutionalize practices of ESG metrics so that it will be easy for you to report. So these are the things we are collaborating with them to ensure that they do. So assurance is not, we are working at it, and we're going to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Razak. Okay, I'm going to stop us here. Thank you very much both for your insights and for sharing your experiences as part of this journey. There is one thing that I would like to just leave with you, and I would be remiss if I did not use this opportunity to say this, Lebo. So if you'll forgive me, I'll just ask for 30 seconds. The ISSB are asking for our comments as to what it is that we should be focusing on, and Lebo alluded to it at the beginning, is that we might be looking at the standards as they are at the moment and say, but they don't talk to what we're doing. But folks, we need to be the ones that get involved in saying to the ISSB, these are the areas that we think we should be focusing on, so that this reporting can talk to what we do as people that are on the African continent. So we need to participate in the processes that they've got, asking for this information. If we don't, other people are going to shape the narrative that is there, shape the agenda, and we won't get involved and we won't have a say. And that's not where we should be. Thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you so much, Raymond. And thank you to both Kemi and Dr. Razak.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations again
Thank you.
to our colleagues in Nigeria for being the leader in this important journey. And to the audience online, we are seeing your question, we are seeing your active participation, and we encourage you to continue putting your questions on the Q&A. Granted, time may not allow us to answer every single one of them during the course of the session, but we will endeavor to respond even by written responses on the chat. So with that, I saw somebody asking about tools, and in fact, in keeping with today's sub-theme on enabling ecosystems for sustainability reporting, I would like to shift us to the next presentation, and this one will help us think about how do we present sustainability information. So I see Tim has just put on his camera there. Tim Kassam is a technical staff at the IFRS Foundation, and he's going to give us a little bit of insights around IFRS taxonomies, or ISSB taxonomy to be precise, and he is joined by Simon Messenger as well. So I am going to hand over to both of you colleagues to take us through your presentations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lebo. So we have to make a little bit of changes with the structure of our presentation today. So on behalf of NDD, Simon has joined, and he'll provide a little bit of context, and then I'll take you through my presentation. Simon, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Tim, and thank you everybody for the opportunity to speak to you today. So, I mean, just very, very quickly, because obviously I'm conscious of time. I think that I guess the few words of context I want to highlight was, just how I guess critical digital reporting is going to be to the implementation of the standards, and the ability for African stakeholders to convey an appropriate narrative which really reflects the the individual considerations of the African continent to both African stakeholders, but also more international stakeholders. It was a message that we heard repeatedly back in May. We got a regulatory roundtable together where we had representatives from more than 20 African regulators that came together, and this message just kept coming back and back and back in terms of making sure that not only do you want to have the right metrics and structure that is being I guess narrated and shared with external stakeholders, but also afterwards having the ability to effectively report that digitally, to make a seamless journey for whoever the stakeholders are to be able to access this data. And we've seen, and I mean, we know that in South Africa in particular, the regulators, in particular led by SIPSI, they've been leading the work, even from a global perspective. It's been really, inspirational, the work that has been done there. So there's a lot that can be, done. We're looking forward to Africa being able to, I guess, carry the baton effectively in terms of demonstrating, how rapidly digital reporting will be able to support the implementation of the ISSB standards. And Tim now is just going to say a few words, I mean, from a practical perspective in terms of what it looks like and what next steps may be that your relevant institutional stakeholders will be able to take. So with that brief intro, Tim, over to you.
Thank you so much, Simon. That's a very helpful info. And again, just to reiterate, I think the point that you made about how Africa, particularly CIPC, that has been leading on digital reporting already. So really delighted to have this opportunity to talk about digital taxonomy with you today. I'm going to try to share my screen. Okay, here it is. Thanks so much again for having us and having me in particular to take part in this very engaging event. It has been really thought-provoking, I thought, and it's a great pleasure to be able to talk about ISSB taxonomy today. So there are a couple of things that I would like to do today and achieve with my session. So the first part, I will talk you through ISSB taxonomy and give you a little bit of an overview about what is a digital taxonomy. But then the other part of my presentation will be to do a little bit of a demo, just to try to make it a bit more real and to try to demystify a little bit this mystery word, digital taxonomy. So I'll start by talking about the big picture and then providing a bit of an overview, and then I'll go to the demo part. So I'll start by talking about the why. Why is digital reporting important in this particular context? So I suppose the most important benefits of digital financial reporting is to ensure that we can deliver with great efficiency information to investors. So we want to enable investors to be able to extract, analyze, and compare information efficiently. And this is really important because at the end of the day, our job at the foundation and at ISSB is to make sure that investors have the disclosures that are necessary for them to make their investment decisions. And we want them to be able to use information in an efficient way. And digital financial reporting support that objective. In addition, investors can also benefit from accessing an expanded population of possible global investment targets through digital reporting. There are also important benefits to the reporting companies. So for the companies preparing the disclosures and preparing the digital reports. So in particular, companies can really benefit from that increased capital market visibility that can result in an increased analyst coverage, access to capital, and ultimately increase foreign investment. And this can be particularly important in the context of emerging and developing economies for which perhaps some of the companies are not necessarily covered in financial databases that are provided by some data providers, global data providers out there. And so through digital financial reporting, companies can really take control of their disclosures and be able to ensure that investors can have access to disclosures that they have worked really hard to provide to their users. And that ultimately can be really important to ensure that global investors can have access to that information and ultimately could then make their investment decisions appropriately. Lastly, last but not least, regulators can also benefit from this process. So we know that today, a lot of regulators have already used digital financial reports as a tool to efficiently oversee and monitor the market. So that's a little bit of discussion around the why it is important. So then our job as a standard setter in enabling that digital financial reporting, digital reporting of sustainability disclosures. So our job as a standard setter was to develop the standards, which we have already done. We also developed a digital taxonomy that reflects the standards. So that is the ISSB taxonomy that has already been done as well. And from our perspective, that it's really important that when we produce the standards, we also have a digital taxonomy available on a timely basis to accompany the standards, so that jurisdictions that are now in the process of adopting or otherwise using the standards can consider digital reporting right from the beginning. So with the publication of the standards and the taxonomy as well, we've delivered on both counts. Now it's really up to the market, up to the ecosystem to really make use of our standards, make use of our taxonomy to ensure that we deliver that ultimate objective of enabling investors to use, access, and digitally compare and analyze sustainability related financial disclosures in an efficient way. It's also important that in this particular context that we clarify what we mean by taxonomy. So the term taxonomy can be a bit confusing in the sustainability space, given that there are green taxonomies, for instance, which exist in this space and for completely different purpose. So in here, we are talking about a digital taxonomy that companies can use for digitally tagging or marking up their sustainability disclosures. So that will enable the delivery of ISSB information in a comparable, machine-readable way. And I'll just walk you through this simple example, and I'll do a bit more later on as well. So essentially, a digital taxonomy provides common elements that enable digital comparability of information that is tagged using those elements. So in this example here, by tagging the information using a tag that is defined in the ISSB taxonomy, investors will be able to efficiently make use of this information in a digital format. So in here, we have 5 different companies, each of them disclosing Scope 1 greenhouse gas emissions, but each describing their disclosures with slightly different label and in foreign languages as well. So these information is largely human readable, so you could make sense that they relate to Scope 1, well, except in those in foreign languages. Perhaps some of us might not speak that language, so we might not be able to understand that disclosure. But all of these little nuances, the slightly different labels, are completely lost to computers. So computers are unable to identify that these disclosures relate to the same concept, which is Scope 1. So by tagging the disclosures using a tag that is provided in the taxonomy, a computer can then quickly, accurately identify that these disclosures are about Scope 1 greenhouse gas emissions, including those provided in foreign languages, because it doesn't matter as long as you use the same tag. And this process of tagging that enables investors to quickly extract exact data point. In here, we have 5 different companies, but essentially the principle could be scaled up, and you could be then talking about being able to compare, let's say, 50,000 companies with a few clicks of a button, which will be very handy. Also importantly, in this example here, it demonstrates how the taxonomy is really designed to support investors' use of sustainability-related financial disclosures. The taxonomy does not introduce any new requirement, and just to be really clear, that the use of the digital taxonomy is not a condition for compliance with ISSB standards. So it's a completely separate process. And I'll just talk through about a couple more slides here. The first one about how the ISSB taxonomy is created to enable the global capture of that baseline of disclosures that will be provided using ISSB standards. So just like the standards were created to establish a global baseline, we want the taxonomy to be the baseline that enable the digital capture of that global disclosures. So the ISSB taxonomy can be directly used by jurisdictions that adopt ISSB standards. And in fact, I think there are some interest already since the publication of our taxonomy by those jurisdictions that are now in the process of adopting or otherwise using ISSB standards, which is encouraging. In addition to that, in this space, we are keenly aware that there are some jurisdictions that might want to adopt ISSB and then top up with additional jurisdictional requirements, for example, to meet public policy objectives. So the taxonomy was designed to enable that process as well. So the taxonomy is created to enable jurisdictions to use the taxonomy as a baseline, and then create top-up elements on top of that to reflect their additional jurisdiction requirements, while still ensuring that the baseline remains to be digitally comparable. And lastly, if necessary, the taxonomy can also support interoperability of ISSB with other standards that are not based on ISSB. The taxonomy in this regard could enable common information to be identified so that investors can clearly identify the ISSB global baseline. And the last thing that I want to talk about here is about supporting holistic digital financial reporting. So the ISSB taxonomy is created to enable the tagging of sustainability disclosures. But we know that what investors really want is this holistic digital financial reporting package that includes both accounting and sustainability disclosures. So to help facilitate that, the taxonomy is designed using taxonomy design best practice, and that will make it straightforward for companies to use the ISSB together with other digital taxonomies that are already used today for tagging companies' financial statements. In particular, we use consistent taxonomy design with the IFRS accounting taxonomy. So for those who are already accustomed with IFRS accounting taxonomy, and SIPC is one of those regulators that currently use IFRS accounting taxonomy, then they will have a head start in using the ISSB taxonomy. So that's a little bit overview about the digital taxonomy. So what I would like to do now as well is to provide a little bit of a demo, just to make it a bit more real and make it a bit more tangible for you. So this is what the ISSB taxonomy looks like. So this part of the taxonomy reflects IFRS S1, general requirements for disclosures of sustainability-related financial information. As you can see here, the taxonomy is structured exactly in the same way as the standard. So you can see that familiar structure of governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics and targets. We have a few others as well reflecting the specific requirements in S1. And let me just show you something else as well. So in here, you can, I just want to show you a few platforms that you can use to view and browse the ISSB taxonomy using freely available taxonomy viewers. And I will make available the links in my slide, and I'll also drop some links in the chat box as well, so you can browse through them. So this one is a taxonomy viewer that is provided by a third party that is called Workiva. So they've uploaded the ISSB taxonomy to their platform, and it allows you to browse through the taxonomy. So if we try this one, general requirements, that is S1. So you can click the elements here. And so let's say governance, if you want to look at what are the tags that are available in the taxonomy to digitally capture information related to governance. So these are those tags, and they are based on requirements in S1. Here is another example. So this one is another taxonomy viewer that is provided by another third party called Core Filings. So if we take climate-related disclosures now, let's say if I want to look at metrics and targets, across industry metrics, greenhouse gas, scope 1, scope 2. So these are my scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 tags and other tags that are available there, reflecting requirements and materials of S2. You can also use software. So this is another third-party software, freely available called RL. So similar kind of mechanism here. And they're all the same view of the taxonomy that we publish, which is ISSB taxonomy, just accessed via different platforms. And I'll drop in some links here so that you can play around with this a little bit. And the reason that I'm showing you this is because I think it's really important that as accountants, we get familiar with digital reporting. And the first step to be familiar with a digital taxonomy, the first step is really to be familiar with a digital taxonomy. So I would really highly encourage that you check out the links that we provide and start browsing through the ISSB taxonomy. And I'll just go back to my presentation here. The last thing that I want to do is to show you how the taxonomy would be used. So in this example, we have a really simple excerpt of a disclosure about a sustainability-related risk. So this is an example of disclosures about the description of the risk, the time horizon of that risk, and the current and anticipated effects of that risk on the entity's business model and value chain. Below the example, you have the relevant taxonomy elements related to the example. So hopefully it should look quite straightforward once you have the time to process this example. And this would be relatively straightforward to you because you understand reporting as an accountant, and you also understand S1 and S2. And when tagging this information, it's really important that preparers identify which specific requirements of the standards does the disclosure relate to, and then use the relevant tags reflecting those requirements. And it's really the responsibility of companies, i.e. accountants, to ensure that the disclosures are tagged correctly. And in some cases as well, also for the auditors to ensure and verify that the disclosures are tagged correctly. And yes, there are consultants, digital consultants, that can help you with ensuring the technical validity of the digital reports, which is equally important. But arguably, these reports are not going to be very useful if they are not tagged correctly. So accountants bring a really important skill set and competency here in the world of digital financial reporting. So I will stop my presentation there. So I've got the links up here in my slide deck, which we will share in due course, and I'll share my links in the chat box as well. So hopefully that is helpful to a helpful overview on the ISSB taxonomy, and help as well to demystify a little bit the world of digital taxonomy. So I'll stop there and happy to take any questions.
And I think if I'll just jump in, Tim, there's a few questions in the Q&A that have popped up, and I think the fundamental one which is coming up is for us to explain, I guess in simple terms, what is the purpose of the taxonomy, and I guess what problem does it solve is probably the underlying question.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important starting point, right? What is the purpose of all of this? I think ultimately, Simon, what we really want to achieve is to ensure that when companies apply ISSB standards and have gone through the length of making available high quality information in their reports, we want to make sure that that information is ultimately used by investors, right? So as a company, you spend a lot of time preparing those information, but then if that information is not available in an easy way to investors, then there is a risk that you have gone through that length and efforts to prepare the information for not necessarily good reason, right? So digital reporting could really play an important role in enabling companies to really take control of the narrative, and then make sure that the information that they have prepared and worked so hard on is available to investors, and investors are being able then to identify necessary information that they have in making their investment decisions. In particular, I think I talked a little bit about emerging and developing economies as well, which are often not necessarily covered in full in many financial databases. So this could be a really important way for companies in those emerging economies to be able to make sure that the efforts that they've gone through in their sustainability and reporting of sustainability information could then be picked up by investors to ensure that capital market efficiency.
Thank you for that, Tim. And just there's another question that just popped up. So just to answer very quickly, because it's a I guess linked but slightly tangential in terms of how this differs from the ESIS. So I mean it's a bigger picture question, but I mean the ISSB standards are obviously a global baseline, which is I guess a non-regulatory requirement. It's a standard which you know, we're working with a number of regulators to adopt, but it's not, I guess, mandated by a regulatory body per se. Whereas the ESRS is, I guess you could say it's equivalent. It's a bit broader in some areas, but it's the equivalent concept, but from a European perspective. And there, of course, there's a regulatory mandate. So there's a lot of similarities between what the ISS, you know, some of the ISSB metrics and the ESRS. There's also some differences, but where there are similarities, there's a lot of work that's been ongoing between the two to ensure that there's interoperability. And therefore, in practical terms, what is likely to happen, because there's a lot of you know, it's political, cultural, economic considerations that, you know, take place in different regions in the world, is that there will be or would be equivalents to the I suppose equivalents to the ESRS in terms of, you know, there would be regional standards that evolve in many different areas around the world. But the idea is that where there are the same topics or the same elements which need to be looked at, this is where the ISSB, you know, language and standards would be, you know, used in all the different areas to ensure that if a stakeholder, an African stakeholder here is reporting to investors in many different jurisdictions, they don't have to report the same information 10 times in slightly different ways. It's essentially the same one that is being used. So I think that's probably, you know, it's more of a big picture in terms of ISSB standards and ESRS rather than digital taxonomy specific, unless, Tim, you've got anything you want to add to
Yeah, no, absolutely, Simon. I think there's not much to add there. As you mentioned, that we've worked really hard with our European counterpart as well to ensure that companies could meet the requirements of both ISSB and ESRS and be efficient with their reporting process, right? And I think the hope is that then companies, regulators as well, jurisdictions will start adopting or otherwise using ISSB standards. And when they do so, then they also use the ISSB digital taxonomy when they require digital reporting. And it's really important that we maintain this baseline and ensure the digital comparability of the baseline, which is technically quite straightforward to do in a digital, from a digital perspective, using a taxonomy that we provide, despite of having some nuances, jurisdictional nuances. Europe is a little bit of a special case because the ESRS was published in parallel with ISSB, and then their digital taxonomy was also developed in parallel with ISSB. Just like we've worked really hard on the standard setting side to ensure interoperability of ISSB and ESRS, we have worked and we will continue to work on interoperability on the digital reporting side of things as well. So one, what we've done in terms of the guidance, then it will make companies to be able to efficiently report against ISSB and ESRS. From a digital reporting side, what we want to achieve is to help investors to be able to compare efficiently information that is provided using ISSB and ESRS where they refer to the common disclosure requirements. So there will be more that we're working on that side as well in next few months or so. So definitely that's an area that we're keenly aware of and keen to support stakeholders globally to ensure that interoperability. Think that all of the questions that we have, Simon? I'm looking at the Q&A as well. I think that those are the questions for our session. Shall we turn it over back to you, Lebo, perhaps to take this forward?
Thank you so much, Tim and Simon. We do appreciate that presentation. I think it was very important to introduce the taxonomy. When I asked Tim to participate in the session, I said to him, every time I hear the word taxonomy, my brain actually freezes. So it is important to start getting us accustomed to the values and benefits of the taxonomies. For our interpreters, I've noted 2 comments on the chat, which are in French, but I think one was specifically relating to whether this is being translated. And I just wish to highlight to our French-speaking participants that we do have simultaneous interpretation for today's session. But with that, I would like for us to pivot a little bit, still on the topic of sustainability related, but this time looking at the IASB. I think we've heard many times around the interoperability, collaboration. This is a classic example of how the two boards in the IFRS Foundation, the ISSB and the IASB's work tends to collide, for the lack of a better word. With that, Bruce Mackenzie, I think he is known by most of us, but again, if you wish to read more about his profile, we have shared our speaker bios on the chat. Over to you, Bruce.
Thanks very much, Lebo, and I appreciate that everybody's had a long afternoon, so I'll try and keep this relatively within time. I'm hoping you can all see the slides that I put up there. What I wanted to do was just spend a very short time talking a little bit about what we're doing in the area of climate from an IASB point of view. Now, there's always some of you who probably wonder why from an IASB point of view is this something we're worrying about when we've also got the ISSB who are looking at what they do. And I think it's very important to understand that there's a lot of connectivity between what we're doing at the IASB from an accounting point of view and what's happening on the other side at the IASB from a sustainability point of view. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Bruce Mackenzie. I'm the African representative on the IASB. As you heard from Ndidi earlier, she represents Africa on the ISSB. So the two of us work together in terms of representing the continent in terms of the IFRS Foundation. Now, if you just remember to take a look at the slide, what it's really talking about is that we are looking at a world where there's a lot more requirements for connectivity. Yes, we're worried about the financial statements. The ISSB has looked at the sustainability related financial disclosures. And as you can see, we've got the accounting and there are the sustainability standards. Now, these are different from a point of view that the one just deals with financial statements, the other one deals with sustainability disclosures. And from a foundation point of view, we have got staff who look at the different, who work on the different sides of that as well. So why then are we starting to cross over with this? Well, if you take a look at the roles of the two boards, remember that the two boards have got slightly different things that they look at. We look at the accounting standards, which means we're worried about what is the impact of of a transaction on the financial performance or financial position of a company. Whereas from the other side point of view, from a sustainability point of view, they're looking more at the sustainability risks and opportunities and disclosing how those are going to be addressed. Now, within our current work plan, we currently have a number of projects that you'll see are starting to very much be impacted by sustainability and starting to be impacted by, well, I shouldn't say sustainability, but the reporting, but the sustainability world. And obviously the concern that investors are having in terms of that space. And if you just look at these, I'm not going to touch on all of them, but we've got an early stage project on provisions, which starts addressing one of our agenda decisions that we took a look at the interpretations committee. And from the interpretations committee point of view, we addressed net zero. We'll talk a bit about that later. We have a project at the moment on climate related and other uncertainties, which I'm going to talk about today. And then we're even starting to see some other challenges. For example, things like power purchase arrangements, where we're starting to see financial instruments that are being impacted by things like what are happening within the green world. So we are starting to see a lot of these things come together. Now let's look at the climate related project. What are we doing from an accounting point of view? Now, the objective of the project is very much defined as to explore targeted actions to improve the reporting and the effects of climate related and other uncertainties in the financial statements. So what are we really saying by that? To start off with, this isn't a new standard. These are targeted actions that we're taking to look at how are the effects of climate and other uncertainties being reported in the financial statements. Now, just to point out, I think the reason this becomes quite important is because whether or not you've adopted ISSB sustainability standards is irrelevant. This is information that is now required within the financial statements. So these will be within what is currently the audited financial statements prepared under IFRS accounting. Now, we do work closely with the ISSB. Clearly, this is a project where there's much collaboration, and the staff at the IASB have worked closely with the staff at the ISSB because this is somewhere which clearly crosses over. Now, why did we decide to do a project from our point of view relating to climate uncertainties? Well, to start off with, we were getting a lot of information, a lot of concern from the market that they're saying there was insufficient, or there didn't appear to be enough consistency between what was happening in the financial statements and what's happening in the sustainability disclosures. And I think we need to look at those two in parallel. To start off with, we think that the IFRS accounting standards are sufficient. And I think that's a big statement that we make, that we do believe the requirements are there to make the disclosures that are required for climate uncertainty. But there are challenges in the application. In other words, people are not applying themselves or applying the standards correctly when they're taking a look at climate risks. They're thinking this is all to do with the sustainability disclosures, not realizing that actually these cross very much over into the accounting as well. So what we've done, as I said, from our actions, and we'll talk about these later, we are looking to raise awareness by issuing some additional guidance, and we'll look at that now. Now, what we've also put on the slide is what we call the evolving reporting landscape. We are very conscious that as sustainability disclosures start being improved and start, obviously, once people adopt S1 and S2 and whatever S3, 4, 5, as those come along, we're definitely going to see an improvement in sustainability reporting. And as that becomes higher quality, as it becomes more mainstream, this will very much clearly impact on the accounting as well. And I'm hoping you'll see through this exposure draft the type of things that could potentially cross over. I think the second thing that's important down at the bottom is that users are telling us that they're wanting information that's beyond what was traditionally in the financial statements. In other words, they're looking outside of the accounts to start finding information about things that are important. And clearly at the moment, they're starting to look within the sustainability disclosures. Here's where we're saying we do need closer connections between those two things. And that's what we're hoping this project's going to start illustrating to people, is how they will tie those two together. Now, there are three main actions we're taking to try and improve on the reporting. Firstly, we're trying to improve how people apply the IFRS accounting standards when dealing with climate-related issues. So the two things we've done there, firstly, we issued the exposure draft, which I'll touch on briefly now. And secondly, the Interpretations Committee, that is our interpretive body, has also addressed and issued an agenda decision dealing with climate-related commitments. So I'm sure you've all heard of the good old-fashioned net zero question. And that is, if I commit to a net zero by, say, 2030 or 2040, does that mean it's going to have an impact on my financial statements? And that's what we addressed within the agenda decision. If you haven't looked at that, by the way, it is on our website, and you can get access to that from ifrs.org. The second thing we're doing is we're raising awareness of the requirements. And I think it's important people understand that a lot of these requirements already exist. And that's something that we've had a lot of regulators asking us and saying, well, are we in a situation, do people need to be doing disclosures of climate-related risks within the financials, or is this only something that impacts on the sustainability disclosures? And we're clearly pointing out, no, this is within the financial statements. There are current requirements for that, and that's this erasing that we're going to do. And thirdly, of course, the strengthening connections. We need to make sure that there are closer connections between what's happening in the sustainability reporting disclosures and what's happening in the financial statements. So clearly we are working with the ISSB to collaborate with them as projects start progressing on both sides. So what is this ED all about? We've issued the exposure draft, really, which is a whole lot of illustrative examples to help try and improve on the reporting of climate-related and other uncertainties within the financial statements. So this is really trying to strengthen that connectivity between what's in the financial statements and what's in the sustainability disclosures. I think what is very important to highlight at the moment is these are illustrative examples. What that means is these are not new standards, they're not changes to the standards, and they're not new requirements. We've drawn these examples from what the current requirements say. And I think that's the key thing. If you take anything out of today, I'd like you to take that out, that these are already required and should be disclosed within the financial statements at the moment. Now, the way we did that in essence was we were trying to look at the overall considerations that are listed here. And if I just touch on those, I mean, for start off with, we thought illustrative requirements were most relevant. Why? Well, we need to show people how you apply these requirements and how they would address the identified concerns. So that's what we're trying to look at within this. Secondly, the types of uncertainties. We've used climate as an example, but I think this is probably very, very illustrative of it's not only climate. So we called it climate-related and other uncertainties. Now we focus, and if you look at the examples, we focus on climate. Why? It's very topical at the moment. People are asking us about climate. People are expecting to see more on climate. But the same disclosures would be required for other risks, whether those risks be IT risks, whether those risks be anything in your industry that may be important. It's important to understand that these examples speak broadly to any type of risks you may have and to various industries. But we have framed them in the area of climate because it's very topical at the moment. Thirdly, these are standalone examples. In other words, what we mean is that you can look at each example and what it illustrates and try and say, what are the matters it's addressing and how do I take those requirements and apply them? Fourthly, these are a good example of how we strengthen the connectivity between the financial statements and the other general purpose for reporting. For example, the sustainability reporting. Fifth, we decided to do these effectively as illustrative examples. So that's what I'm saying. We didn't issue a new standard because after a lot of discussion on this, we realized we did not need to do a new standard because the requirements already exist. Now, for those of you who've been involved in financial reporting, you'll understand that for us to issue a new standard, it's quite a big step. It requires quite a lot more consultation, effective dates, how's this going to impact on various other areas of the accounts. And when we looked at it, we realized we did not need to do that. All of these are already there. What that does mean, however, is because they're illustrative examples, there's no change in the physical requirements, which means there's no effective date, which means effectively these examples are effective the moment they're published. Now, a lot of companies did turn to us and say, but hang on, how are we meant to do this if it's immediate? Surely we need some time to implement. And we do believe that companies should have sufficient time to look at their disclosures and see how they would have changed those. So what have we illustrated? Effectively, there are 8 key examples that this ED brings out. And these look at 3 areas: materiality and judgments, assumptions and estimation uncertainty. And then we've even looked at things like disaggregation. Now, these will address various things, but the one I really want to draw out was one that's in the materiality judgments, because I think it's quite an important one. And I'll just give an example of something that we put in there. So let's assume we've got a company. They're operating in a very, very carbon heavy industry. So imagine you've got a company, you are operating in a carbon heavy industry, which means people would be expecting to see disclosures around what's happening there. What we have noticed is, let's assume I'm a company and I say, well, I've got my sustainability disclosures. So I've disclosed my sustainability, what my plans are, etc., and how I'm going to address my carbon issues within it. But when I assess that for the financial statements, the assumption I make in the financial statements, or the assessment I make there, is that they have no impact on the assets and liabilities. Now, the reason could be, for example, that when I take a look at the financial impact of addressing the carbon, it's not that big for me, which means it's not going to have a material impact on my financial statements. Now, within the financial statements, should I be making comment on what my plans are? And the conclusion we came to is we said, well, hang on, if I'm a user of those financial statements, if I'm looking at your company, the assumption I have is because you're working in a very carbon heavy industry, we would expect you to say something about this, which means the conclusion we come to is saying, well, within the financial statements, we would expect that you actually do comment within the financial statements on the impact that this could have, even if what you're sharing in the financial statements is that people are saying to you, this has no material impact. So we don't mind if that's what you're saying, but we're saying if this is material to use the financial statements, you should still be making comment on that. Another good example we've done is an example 8, we talk about disaggregation. And a simple example is for property, plant, and equipment. There's a lot of places where you should be disaggregating assets. And we use an example. I mean, who's to say that the reason how you disaggregate things is not by potentially what their long-term impact will be on the environment? That could be material to your situation. So it's very important to understand that as we start moving through these examples, you could apply them to various things. As I said, it could be IT risks, it could be the risks of electricity, it could be climate. You need to make sure all of these are being given in the financial statements. And as I said, some of them even address things like credit risk. So we've even looked at financial instruments. The effective, well, the comment period for these, the exposure draft, is 28 November. So we've given you enough time to take a look at these and really work through them to decide, A, have we hit the right target? So are we really addressing the right things with this? And secondly, do you agree with the conclusions that we've reached? bearing in mind that for most companies, they will need to look at this and really start implementing it, not necessarily in the first set of accounts, but from the point at which we issue them, they need to start considering them. So it's very important that companies do start taking a look at this once it's issued. We're expecting to issue this in Q1 2025. That's the hope anyhow, probably Q2 maybe. But I think the important thing to understand here is that that you've only got until the end of November to close this off. Now, the one reason, the thing I wanted to question is a lot of people always say to me, but Bruce, why are you looking at this? By the way, this was driven from our agenda consultation, where many, many of our stakeholders turned to us and said, we want to see you doing more connectivity. We want to see a lot more around what you're doing in that space. And we believe this at the moment is the best way for us to address that. There's a lot more information on this and a lot more on any of the stuff we're doing at the moment on our website, not just, of course, from the accounting point of view, but to point out also from the sustainability point of view. So please do go to the ifrs.org website. There's a lot of information available there. A lot of people think we charge for this. Interestingly, we don't. There's a lot of information, videos, webinars, things that you can download that are available on our website. So please do take a look at those. So with that being said, I will stop there because I'm conscious that we did schedule to finish at 20 past. So what I will do is we'll see if there are any questions that have come through and if any of those I can address before we finish that. The question, I see there's a question there. Okay, let me work through these. Would it be good to include financial and non-financial measures as part of an integrated report, or is it better to separate ESG sustainability report? I think the answer to that is it depends on what you're looking at. Some companies do have what they call an integrated report, but they're still doing the financial statements separately. That is still required in most countries. Will we get to the stage of having one single report which covers everything? I think that is the hope, but I think it's also the holy grail at the moment in reporting to eventually end up with one single report. At the moment, the ISSB still needs to work a lot through what they're doing. So I think that we need to give them time to develop their suite of standards, and we'll have to obviously develop as time goes on. The next one asked there, at what point does climate-related issues impact on the numbers in the financial statements? What are some of the assumptions and estimates you put into consideration? The answer here is they should be impacting on the numbers. And I think that's what we're trying to illustrate within this, is that if you're not considering climate within your numbers, within your financial statements, you're probably not doing things correctly. So my suggestion is take a look at these examples. And when you look at these examples, you'll start seeing that what we're really trying to do is highlight exactly, Samuel, what you've drawn up within that question. It's exactly what we're trying to show. You need to be assessing these within that. And the last one there, will the ED be linked to IS 37? It's quite cross-cutting, so it's not necessarily going to be linked to one standard. It's kind of going to be some illustrative examples. We're still deciding where they will be. But yes, I mean, where there are, for example, something linked to a specific standard, we will put it in. But yeah, I mean, you will see that, just a quick one on that, we're about to issue a new exposure draft on changes to IS 37 on provisions. And what you will see from that is that the new provisions exposure draft actually brings in some of that stuff we've been discussing on net zero provisions. So yeah, keep an eye out for that one. A lot happening in this space. With that being said, I'll say thank you. Lebs, over to you.
Thank you so much, Bruce, for that presentation. And just for our participants, I have put that exposure draft on the chat for you to just follow that link. And yes, please do comment. Please do comment. With that, I would like to thank all of you for your participation. And this is where my work ends for the day. I would like to hand over to Mr. Osei Ajejemfi, who is the technical director from ICA Ghana, but also importantly, a member of the PAFA Corporate Value Reporting Technical Advisory Group. Over to you, Osei.
Thank you so much, Lebo. I want to start by also offering our condolence to Dr. Ndidi, and we thank her for having the courage to be with us to go through this journey. This demonstrates her commitment to sustainability issues, and it also demonstrates that she eats, she drinks, and sleeps sustainability, and Africa love her for that. Now, back to what we have gone through today. We thank all the participants and also facilitators for making this day a very useful one. Mr. David Madon started very well and gave us all that we need. And we can see clearly that all the pillars that he shared with us permeated all the presentations that followed. He asked us to embrace sustainability. It's so important. There should be a tone at the top. Commitment from the leadership. Without that, there's no way that we can be able to walk the journey successfully. We should also develop our expertise. It's very important. As accountants, we have the capacity, capability, and also the expertise. But we need to learn more, new things, and upskill what we already have. And then the importance of collaboration. Collaboration is key because if you don't leverage on your stakeholders, there's no way that you can be able to go far. And here the role of regulators is key. And we found out with the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria and with the work that they've done in Nigeria, and also in Ghana, we have ICAG as a regulator, and what we need to do with our stakeholders is so key to involve the stakeholders, collaborate with them in the journey that we are working towards sustainability. Then also we listened to our lady from MTN, and indeed she did market MTN so well to us. And she helped us to appreciate the fact that these pillars that we have already talked about are so key, tone at the top. And here at the board level, they decided to integrate and embed sustainability in their activities. And so they begin to read, understand, and conduct gap analysis to assess where there's a need for them to fill in. And they work very closely with the regulators. They believe in what they were committed to, and that helped them to have a competitive advantage and edge over their competitors. And that also helped them to build trust with their stakeholders because they were able to produce reports that could be trusted by stakeholders. Yes, indeed, the journey is rough. Why? Because it's the beginning. And so we don't expect to have a perfect report. And I remember what the vice chair of ISSB said. We are not expecting perfection. The most important thing is for you to start. Of course, we don't want to greenwash. We want to make sure that whatever data that we are carrying out can be trusted. And so data and materiality also came to being because it can affect our credibility and the credibility of the report that we are churning out. Indeed, we'll not have it all at the beginning, but what we need to do is to continue to integrate and embed sustainability in decision-making, in our strategies, in our business practices. Then we thank also the gentleman who did present the IFRS taxonomy. Yes, digital reporting has arrived. And as accountants, we need to build our capacity in digital reporting. Why? It can enhance capital market efficiency and also transparency. It's all about investors. But all the report that we are churning out is for investors to take decisions. And so with digital reporting, they can help them to analyze and more importantly, compare. Digital comparability is key for investors, for companies, and also for regulators. They need to have a one-stop shop for financial information. And that is what digital taxonomy reporting offers us by using a computer-readable format to report financial information for comparison reasons. And so let's build our capacity in this so that we can be able to channel reports that will be very useful for investors to take decisions. Tagging and marking up sustainable sustainability disclosure reporting information is what investors need at the moment. And personally, I love the demonstration that he gave us, made available to us. And there are a lot of resources available that can help us to build our capacity as accountants. This information is needed for investment decision-making, and the only way that we can do so is to go the digital way. And we thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Then Mr. Bruce Mackenzie, as always, thank you so much for helping us to know the special draft that have been issued. It is so important because in issue out reports on sustainability, it should not be a standalone report. It should speak to the financial statement. And then the financial statement should also speak to the sustainability reporting. And so with this ED, it will help accountants to understand why there should be that connectivity between IFRS accounting and IFRS sustainability reporting. In all, we thank you participants also for your questions, so insightful. Although not all the questions were answered, but you can trust that PAFA will ensure that these questions are well answered. Indeed, it will form the basis for future capacity building initiatives. And so if your questions were not answered at this time, don't think that's the end of it. There will be another opportunity for you to get your questions answered. And I thank PAFA and all those who work behind the scenes to make this event very successful. We don't see you, but you're so important. It's like watching a film. You see the characters, they will play all their part, you get all the name. But at the end of it all, you see some names scrolling down the screens. All these names were working very hard behind the scene to project the image of the actors. And so here the actors, facilitators were being projected, but there are more people behind the scenes working seriously to make sure that all these things are delivered right on time and to our expectation. And so we thank them so much for making another grand success of this event. So Level, I'm done with my closing remarks. You can take over.
Thank you so much, Jose. Mine is to say thank you very much again to all our participants. Please note that there is a survey at the end of this session. So when you log out, you will get a pop-out that says, please rate our event. We absolutely thrive on feedback. So please let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, and what we can do better for tomorrow. And of course, there is tomorrow, there is a Wednesday session, and there's a Thursday session. So please let us know what we can do better. Thank you very much. And again, to those behind the scenes, the credits that Jose mentioned, we truly appreciate your support in making this day a reality. Great afternoon and evening to all of you. Signing out.